What's up, everybody? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Subfighter MMA under Tracy Hess. I train there. It is an amazing gym. Tracy Hess is a coach that has been in the game for decades. He's an amazing fighter. My coach, Fernando Vargas, is under him. I'm under him. Gabe Green, all these amazing fighters located in Lakewood, California. If you are interested, hit me up. Follow him on Instagram at Subfighter MMA. What's up, everybody? Podcast 46 here, and I'm with my good friend, Liam Kacvinsky. I'm excited to start working with him, and, I've been working with him.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Start this episode with him. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, man.
Oh, man, we have so much to talk about.
We do.
And I'm
indeed.
so excited. Let's just a little bit of backstory. So we worked together.
Mm-hmm.
Worked together.
Soon. Soon you could say that.
Oh, God. So if there's one thing I noticed that, we kind of gravitated towards each other in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I feel like the way we work and the way you went about things is something that I kind of naturally was like, he's a good guy and I really like him. And I was like, let me get to know him a little more. And I was just like, man, this guy's great.
Thanks, man.
And
keep inflating my ego. I'm here for it.
So, what's cool, what I feel like I appreciated most about you is that like you're your own genuine person. You go about things in your own way, and you respected the fact that I was going about things my way and stuff like that. And we just came together and we had good conversations. It would tend to lean political for some reason.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. But it's fun. Those were fun conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? We got to do this. We got to have a long form conversation. This is the best way to go about things nowadays, I feel like.
Definitely.
Not in these minor 15-second sound bites and 140 characters type shit.
Yeah, arguing with people on Twitter, Instagram comments.
It's not going to work. I feel like this is the best way. Sitting down and just having the conversation.
Definitely. Definitely.
So I would say, politically, just get straight into it. I would say I stand anywhere on either side, But what I appreciate about you is you stood firm in, where you stand.
That's right.
And you're pretty far left in this sense.
Pretty far left?
Pretty far left.
That's a pretty accurate comment.
Actually, extremely far left. Would you say?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm extremely.
The left is to the left.
Yeah. I mean, I am left. I'm left identifying.
For sure.
I'd say a little bit more left than the general American consciousness.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go as far to say I'm
kidding.
Super extremist left or whatever. But yeah, pretty far left.
What have you always felt this way?
Yeah, I know that I've at least always been interested in left or democratic politics for pretty much my whole life.
Got it.
I grew up in a very left-leaning household. My parents are both Democratic voters, always have been. I personally would say that they're a little bit more moderate leftists than I would want them to be, just kind of like pushing them a little bit more and more and more each conversation we have.
Sure.
But yeah, growing up in that environment definitely, I would say, affected my upbringing a little bit.
Okay.
I wouldn't say like it brainwashed me or anything. I feel like I would have naturally felt this way. But it opened my eyes to a lot of things from a young age that maybe growing up with a different household or growing up in a different state or a different environment, it would have been more challenging.
That's definitely something that we don't take into account as much as what kind of environment did this person grow up in, right? Of like, are you in Southern California or are you in the deep South?
Mississippi, man.
Wherever it is.
Right.
And it's kind of like you do have to take that into account, and that is going to take not necessarily a toll, but that's going to be a huge influence on the way you stand politically. You know?
Yeah.
And not even necessarily like, I feel like these people in these environments, I feel like a lot of them don't even necessarily truly, genuinely believe in those ideals. They just kind of go about, how everyone else is going about things. And they're kind of like, all right, well, if this is, everyone who I'm around, if they believe this, then I guess I do too.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people uninformed just because of
definitely
what their parents' beliefs might have been like made them think in one certain way or another.
Got it.
They're informed by their environment and climate. I'm sure we'll get into this later, but it's like, for an example, like socialism, communism is such an evil word in this country. And I feel like for a lot of people, they don't really know why. It's just like socialism is evil. Communism is evil. But like they don't understand what those concepts really mean.
Yeah.
It's just from a young age, what they've been taught is that this is evil and what we're doing is right.
Got it. Why do you feel like, if you look at it from a historical standpoint, why do you feel like we're taught that, you know, of all of these countries that have practiced socialism and communism, that is just the complete, you know, they've all failed and it just doesn't work. And that's obviously what we're taught in school.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, but I don't remember growing up learning too much about capitalism. I was just, I don't
Right.
specifically. The only thing I learned, maybe it was like a term in social studies.
Yeah.
But I didn't really learn about it.
Senior year social studies.
You know what I'm saying?
Little unit on economy.
Sure. But like socialism and communism are things that were like taught to us, and they were a sense of like, oh, like these, like look at the atrocities that occurred under these political environments, you know?
Right.
And it's pretty interesting that we're taught that. And obviously people are going to feel a certain way if that's what they're taught, you know? But why do you feel like the education industry has essentially intentionally kind of steered us in this anti-socialism, anti-communism
Yeah.
route?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
And like I can dig into it and we can totally get started
We've
right
got
here,
time,
right now.
mate. We've got time. I'm just kidding.
But I think like one thing to clear up beforehand is like it's not necessarily the teachers at fault for doing that.
Oh, 100%. It's definitely not.
I think it's a lot of state curriculums and what is kind of like being expected
for sure.
students to learn and like, hey, they should be learning this. And that puts a lot of pressure on teachers who are like individuals in the system that we exist in.
100%.
On like what they can be teaching and what they can be saying.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that teachers are kind of forced to kind of teach a curriculum that they don't even have to necessarily believe in, but that's just what they're forced to teach. You know?
Definitely. But going a little bit more into the question of like why we're taught this way. I mean, to go in depth, like I think it has a lot to do with just kind of us learning or accepting at a very young age that what we are doing is the right thing to do. It's the correct system to be in so that when we graduate high school, we go to college. And then when we are done with college, we go into the workforce.
Sure.
And
so that we can become this money-making machine for the economy.
Right, exactly. You know? Like there's so much talk and ambition about like being the next CEO, being the next Bill Gates, Elon Musk now. But what's not talked about is that those are like the 1% of the 1% of people. Whereas not everybody is going to be that. Like everybody else is going to probably end up working under someone else, making less money than that person, and then that person making less money than the person on top of them. This is taught to us in school so that we can accept that what we're doing is the right thing, so that our labor can potentially still be continued to be exploited down the road for other people and corporations to make profit.
Do you feel like, but you're right, and I understand, I'm not disagreeing with you. Do you feel like at the end of the day, you know, you're right, obviously not everyone's going to be Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, right? But at the end of the day, if you go about things the way, you know, let's just say we're taught, you know, at the end of the day you become an employee under these corporations, right? That is at the end of the day our choice, right? You could technically go and try to become one of these people, correct?
I mean,
revolutionize an industry.
You could,
because if you look at Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and what's his name, Bill Gates, you know, or not necessarily Bill Gates,
Steve Jobs, whoever.
Steve Jobs. They came up from the bottom, correct?
Yeah, sure.
So
from the bottom, quote unquote, because they have their parents' money and a lot of assets from their generational wealth.
Well, Bill Gates
helped them.
Bill Gates, and I'm not sure Steve Jobs. I'm not sure.
I mean, there's
some. Obviously, there's some. There's like Trumps and stuff who are like given their inheritance.
But still,
not all of them.
You could even look at Steve Jobs as an example. There's this huge mythos of him starting Apple in his garage. But he had to have been under some sort of wealthy family to have a house in that area to where he can build that stuff from, have enough money to get the parts to get Apple going, have people under him. Like, you have to bring in a lot of factors. You're not starting from nothing. Like, you have to take into your account.
No one's really starting from nothing in America.
Right. Well, there are people in much more fortunate situations than others.
I want to say that if you're extremely, would you say that the most, underprivileged, disenfranchised person in America is better off than a lot of the world, though? I would say so.
I mean, yeah, you could say that.
Right.
But
like, we have access to resources, like we have access to food and water. We have access
I mean, not everyone.
Not everyone. I mean, most do though, right?
Most do if you have a household and minimum wage, which is not you cannot survive off of a living wage in most states. Even in California, like
you definitely can in California.
Definitely can in California.
And
even saying California's minimum wage is way more than a lot of other states' minimum wage, but our standard of living,
it's higher.
It's way higher, it affects people who don't have access to a lot of these things in a lot of different ways. And sure, you could say that the lower class of the lower class, as one way to put it, are better off here than a lot of other places of the world. And I personally think that we all should be actively trying to improve the lives globally, especially today when we're becoming a lot more globalized. But still, like, you could say that, but that doesn't change the fact that we still need to make things here better.
Definitely, I'm not saying we shouldn't.
Right. I know you're not.
But for sure.
There's a lot of people that are like, oh, you should be happy that you live in America because we have it so great here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the point they're trying to get across there is that we're better off than most of the world, and that statistically that is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have these amazing lives. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? Right. So those people who are like, like, you're in America, like, be grateful and you're better off than everybody, like, pick yourself off the bootstraps, and like, that's not, like, I understand,
which is like largely BS. Like, you cannot, like, pick yourself up by the bootstraps,
especially in the economic climate
we live
today.
Yeah, no, you're right, but that's largely because we live in a system that actively puts us at a disadvantage. Like,
give me examples.
Well, I mean, like, the structure of labor in this country is one where, like, you and I, we work for a company, and the management of that company is actively trying to keep costs down for them to pay us so that they can make more money and revenue from the labor that we're putting in.
But if you look at it from a profitable standpoint, a lot of these places don't actually operate on the profits that we think.
Right.
Like, for example, like, I'm not sure, like, this is what my uncle told me. I'm not trying to, like, so fact check me if you can. But a lot of these places do not operate on that much profit. Like, Target, I believe, is only, like, under, like, 4 or 5% profit. Like, a lot of these places actually have to pay for, like, goods or whatever it is, rent, stuff like that. It could be better, stuff like that. But it just depends. I want to say that, like, you're right. Obviously, a lot of these CEOs and these corporations are bringing in extreme amounts of profit that are just, like, it's completely wrong, and, like, they're just getting rich off of the exploitation of, like, people like us or whatever it is,
Exactly.
But not all. It's not all cases, correct?
I mean,
most is what you're saying.
Why else would these companies exist and have employees under them if they're not looking to incentivize? Like, everything under capitalism is to make a profit.
True.
Like, every company is just looking to make money.
Sure.
And they're looking to make money in the cheapest way possible.
For sure.
And in order to do that, you exploit the work of other people. And that's why slavery was one of the biggest economic boons in the country right at the start. I mean, fact check me if I'm wrong, but like I think it made like 2/3 amount of the nation's profit.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we always have been exploiting people. We've it's always been top people are looking to exploit the work and lives of people under them in order to profitize from it.
So are you saying that nowadays that's definitely true, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but nowadays, right? Is that something that we are like kind of like forced into, like becoming exploited? Like, don't you feel like we as Americans in 2021 do have a choice to some degree?
I don't think so.
Really? Like,
I think we're born here, and you are either part of an extremely wealthy family that is like, all right, my son, my daughter, whoever, like, you can pick up my company once I'm gone. Here's 6 figures. Here's $1 million. You're going to keep running this company.
That many people, though.
Right. And the rest of the people are people just born into this country that go to school, learn that this is the right economic system, and that we need to just keep working for the rest of our lives. So work a 9 to 5 and make enough money to be happy. And then go to sleep, wake up the next day, and work.
But you can make the argument that if you make the right financial choices under capitalism, look, at the end of the day, under capitalism, we are consistently being fooled by whatever industry it is. Like, buy this so you can be this, eat this so you'll feel this, wear this so you'll do this. You know what I'm saying? That's capitalism for sure, right? Morally, it's obviously fucked up. But like in general, if you do make the right decisions there, like if you understand, it's fucked up that you have to think this way, but if you do make the right decisions in our system, you could be pretty solid. Correct?
So let me ask you, what are those right choices?
Like, okay, sure. So like the concept of like credit, right? Like not swiping and eating Chick-fil-A every day.
Not buying all the time.
Okay, another thing is stock market, or like saving your money rather than buying it on bullshit, you know?
Yeah. I would say, though, the stock market is a looser example because it's all fake.
Yeah, I wouldn't say stock market.
And like look at what happened earlier this year with GameStop is like immediately when like
so bad.
The average people were starting to make profit, the Redditors that were like, oh, we're gonna send GameStop through the roof.
That was awful.
The people at Wall Street were like, okay, no, like normal people are making money, we gotta put a stop.
What's crazy is that was the first time in a long time where people from both sides of the political spectrum came together and were like, yo, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And then you have like Robinhood, which is this app that's like, trading is for everybody. We believe that.
Except when you're fucking us.
Right, except when you're getting rich when you're not supposed to be by exploiting the system that you're not supposed to know about.
Yeah, so definitely. No, that's definitely true.
Sorry, I got
no,
tangent there.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. The stock market's not the best example. But, like, I understand it. It's sad, but if you do make the right decision, we're constantly fed, like Coke or whatever it is. In general, you go into places and you walk into a grocery store and all the fucking bad food is in the fucking middle, like, and all the healthy food is hidden in the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like, they want us to do that. And because that's what sells, and it's fucked up. But at the end of the day, it is still my choice, correct?
Also, well, that kind of brings me up to another thing that I wanted to mention, because we like to think that we have a lot of choices in this system when that's not actually the case.
Got it.
Because you have a lot of these companies, like these beverage companies, that is like, oh, like you can either choose like a Coke or a Pepsi or like whatever drink you're drinking. But like at the end of the day, they're all owned by this like one mega corporation that like facilitates distribution of all these different drinks. And then at the end of the day, they're making the profit from it. Like there's so few companies at the top
that care about the genuine well-being of us.
I wouldn't say so. I would just say that there's just few companies and corporations at the top. We don't really have a choice. And whatever we buy, whatever we consume just to live, we're always going to be giving them money. And that's just the system that we live in.
Got it. Okay, so, all right, Liam, you're president right now.
No, I would not want to be the president right
sure,
now.
but saying in general, what is, all right, let's just say you have the shot. Obviously, you feel like there's these flaws in our system. What specifically are you changing? What are you getting rid of? What are you thinking?
I think the government needs to be actively playing a larger role in what we do and decide as a nation.
Do you have that much faith in our government?
I mean, no, I don't on either side, because they're constantly being bought out by super PACs and these corporations that send them money to pass laws that benefit their businesses.
So do you understand why the rejection of that is understandable? Like, kind of like, I don't trust power. You can think about it from a human nature standpoint of like, do you trust anyone in that kind of position of power?
Right. Which, and that's a good question.
Because communism, a dictatorship, socialism is all great if you have the right people in power.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify either socialism or communism as a dictatorship, though.
Oh no, I'm saying either like any of those.
I get what you're saying, but under those systems, the power is put in hands of the masses, and it's put in hands of labor unions, for example, or people in the workforce. It takes power away from people up at the top and puts it in the hands of the general public. And it gives them more power and agency in the system that they exist in. And I think we need a lot more of that in this country.
That I can agree with, definitely. Like, obviously these people at the top are not doing what's best for us,
No,
and
clearly.
definitely the rich getting richer. It's fucked up. You got these fucking horrible bankers making these billions of dollars and manipulating the fucking stock markets and shit. Like, it's awful.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. So, but how does one do that realistically now?
I mean, that is a large battle to fight, because it goes against a lot of what we have founded this country on. I think a lot of that has to do with organizing unions in the workforce, kind of tightening the bonds between workers and giving them more power in their workforces. So that way their employers have a little less power and they listen to the people that are working under them. And then with that power, they can certainly go to whatever local politician, representative they want to see change from. And because they have that power there, they can fight for it a little more equitably than we can now. Because, like, I mean, look at this past year. It's been protests all throughout most of the year about a lot of different topics.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what has that done? Like, you take into account, and like this is kind of going on a tangent, but you take into account Black Lives Matter that protested George Floyd, Breonna Taylor's death, and what has that gotten?
Is he still on trial? He's still on trial, right? Yeah.
Yeah, still on trial to this
Dude, if
day.
he gets off.
When there is like video evidence of him killing.
I don't understand how he's still on trial.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, that should signal a flawed system in and of itself, where the people at the top, and like, I hate to generalize, but I'm going to generalize because I don't care. But like, you could even put police officers at the top because they are protecting a lot of what institutions we hold in this country. But you see a lot of people protesting stuff like this, and nothing has changed and nothing is done. And that's because the people and the masses don't have any power in this system.
What change are, let's just take BLM for example. What changes specifically? There's this concept that it's there's people that say on the other side of political spectrum that it's a leaderless movement. Like what specifically are they asking for?
I mean, defunding the police, and like that doesn't mean police. We should have no police forces or anything. I mean, in an ideological society, we wouldn't need police force at all. But obviously, we can never get to an ideological society.
Exactly.
So in that, we should be redistributing funds that is given to police, because police units make hell of a lot more money than they ever need. Whereas like schools or communities that like minority communities in LA like are not given enough money and resources to truly like better or develop their communities enough and not stand on more equitable grounds as other communities in the area. Like we see such a shift when we go from like Beverly Hills to like South Central LA, where that money that is given to police forces that continuously like oppressively police these communities, like in South Central LA, we just take money from those harmful police forces and just redistribute it across the region.
Make the argument that obviously we have a policing issue, right?
Yeah,
it's
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you understand someone who says we would need better policing rather than less policing?
No, not at all.
Got it. So why not?
Because we continuously have seen why stronger policing or giving more money to police has failed people in this city and in this country as a large, like in the greater masses. Like to me, it's the same thing as like giving or not putting restrictions on guns after mass shootings. It's like we see a lot of these violent instances, especially during protests, where police are beating up peaceful protesters and killing them in some cases. Like, why are we continuing to fund that when we can put that money in more productive areas of society?
Sure. Understood. But would you say that the way the media is and the way things are going, like they kind of like put the narrative on like those few shitty cops, and like beating these protesters up and completely like abusing their power? But could you make the argument that that is a minority, not the majority?
I
just like gun owners, a majority of gun owners aren't going out and shooting people.
Right. I get what you're saying, but
why should that small minority dictate what the entirety of the demographic is?
Sure. No, yeah. Right. But I think specifically with policing, the police are just a like agency put in place to continuously establish what is normal and like who should be punished, who deserves to be punished, and who deserves to be arrested or pulled over or even tased, even killed.
Sure.
So that's specifically my problem in the area of policing, where like you could make the argument like, oh, it's just a few bad cops. But I think the entire system that we have is just wrong and needs to be restructured at least.
Restructured in a way of specific. Do you have specifics in regards to? And I would probably agree with you there. It definitely needs a complete rehaul and restructuring our policing.
Right.
The argument that I've heard before is within policing there shouldn't be room for bad cops. Whereas
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Doctors like, oh, he's a bad doctor and his patients die.
You can't
Right.
afford.
Like, you wouldn't stand for that.
Exactly.
You can't afford to have a bad apple in that industry.
Exactly.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And that's
Right.
totally understandable. It
Right.
definitely needs a complete, rehauling and restructuring. I'm not extremely educated on, the concept of policing and the way it's structured. I would probably agree with you that they're taught to uphold a certain standard and law and order that like could possibly be flawed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I understand.
Right.
For sure.
And the whole like motto of like to protect and serve is just complete bullshit. It like you are not protecting and serving anybody if you're killing a man who
But once again, you're looking at the
maybe
minority
counterfeited money. Like no one deserves to die
Sure.
for crime,
But
period.
once again, you could make the argument that that is a bad apple in the industry, right? It's not the entire. Is Derek Are you saying that Derek Chauvin? That's his name. Are you saying that he is a representation of the entire policing system of the U.S.?
I wouldn't say that he's a representative of the entire policing system, but I think there are enough representatives like him to where it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough police officers that act in a similar way that he does that would do a similar thing in the same situation, to where it is a problem, to where police forces should be getting a lot less money than they do. There's no point in giving police forces that much money over schools or even just like community like parks or stuff like that. Like, why not?
How do you make those systems better by defunding them?
I think you give them less resources to work with, and they become
How does that make them better?
They become a lot less oppressive in that way.
How does that make them better though? How would that make them less oppressive?
Because they have a lot less money and power in the system that they exist in. They wouldn't be so oppressive on minority communities.
I want to disagree because, like, you defund. Let's say you defund the police, you give them less money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying like are you taking them out of the streets then?
Taking police out of the streets? Not necessarily.
But then you still have those same people there doing the oppression.
Give them less weapons. Give them less vehicles. Give them.
I don't understand how this is making it better though.
I mean, I am not too educated in exactly like what needs to be done in defunding the police. They just make a gross amount of money. And like, honestly, I do think that it could be beneficial to have less police officers on the streets. That
location plays a factor. You can make the argument that some places need more police.
Why?
You go into places like extremely crime-ridden places. How would taking police out of them?
Okay, so let's take a crime-ridden place, and we'll say like drugs are a big factor into a lot of the crime in that area. Why wouldn't we then take money away from policing to where they can oppressively like arrest, maybe even like silently kill people who are drug addicts? Because that is drug dealers, because that is what we believe to be like evil in our society. And I'm not saying it's like a good thing. I'm not saying drugs are a good thing or anything, but like there's a lot more criminalization on it than needs to be. So anyway, back to the point. We take funds away from the police force in that area with a lot of drugs, and we just put them in like rehabilitation centers. We put them in schools. We put them in areas where people can work and offer those like small businesses more money to hire more people. Like that would eliminate a lot of the drug problem without it being so oppressive and without it being necessarily done by policing. There's a lot of other avenues that we can go about than just oppressing people with the police and being like, hey, listen up, you better be a stand-up citizen.
Well, I get it.
We might kill you.
I don't necessarily, I don't feel like, not necessarily, like, I feel like if you go in adding more police doesn't necessarily directly lead to more oppression.
But okay, say in this
Beverly Hills is flooded with police.
say in this studio
oppressed?
though, like we have 10 police officers like
Sure.
in the hallway that are just monitoring everything and anything we do. Like I personally would feel a little uncomfortable with that.
Well,
Especially, and like I can't speak because I'm a white guy.
Okay.
Like I can't speak on the personal experiences of BIPOC or
Yeah.
people who come from minority communities.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that they would not feel comfortable with more police in their area, especially because statistically, police are more likely to arrest, stop, question those kinds of people more than, say, I would. So I'm sure that they would not feel comfortable with more police in whatever area they live with, especially if they're just trying to live.
I get it, but you could still, like, you add rehabilitation, you add money into schools and all that stuff, you add money into these great places, and I'm not saying, I'm definitely an advocate for that, for sure. We need more money in these things. But at the end of the day, there still is shitty-ass people out there that, like, no matter what you do in their area, like, kind of like, you know, you're in a crime-ridden area, if you take police out, like, you can make the argument that adding these systems would just kind of like make them do their thing even more, right? Like there's no enforcement of the law, like because there has to be some kind of law and order, correct?
No, yeah, and that's what I was like getting at originally, like in this discussion is just like it's too idealistic in my opinion to say that we should have no policing. Ideally, in a utopia, we would have no police.
For sure.
But that's not the reality any of us are going to ever live in. But my point is that there's a gross amount of money given to police forces that could be used in more beneficial areas of society if we just take some of that money out of what they are given by the government and just put it into different places.
But you can also make the argument that more money doesn't necessarily solve the issue, correct?
I think it's
like, look how much money LA has spent on homelessness. It's only gotten worse.
I mean, you could argue that LA could be spending a lot more money on homelessness. That's personally what I think.
I don't know the exact number.
Drug war too. Like we put more money into the drug war. Nothing's come from it.
Yeah, sure. Like I don't know how much money goes into the drug wars. I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah,
And it's just an example.
that is something I need to look up a little bit too. It's just I'm unfamiliar with like how much we're putting into the homeless community in LA, but I mean like look at Echo Park. What's happening right now?
That shit was bad. What did they do? They went in there and just kicked everyone. Where'd they send them?
I don't even know, but they're like just picking up people's homes
Yeah.
just without a warning, just sending them off. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
yeah, we could be doing a lot better to serve
Our
everyday people. And like there could be people that disagree with me, but homeless people, drug addicts are everyday people.
For sure.
They're no less people than you or I.
Definitely.
And like I think a lot of what society tells us is right is that they are lesser people, and that kind of goes into policing.
They made their choices.
Right, exactly, and that goes into policing where they kind of like just think, oh, they're a drug addict. Like, they
Is
don't
a
really
police
matter in
officer
society.
wrong for is a police officer wrong for, let's just say a police officer pulls over 10 cars and let's just say a police officer, let's just say 9 out of 10 people that an officer pulls over look the same, dress the same, act the same, right? Is a police officer wrong for automatically assuming that if someone looks like that, that there is a possibility that I have to act a certain way because of that? Like, it's kind of like human nature, kind of, right? Like it sucks to say, and we should be holding these cops to a higher standard, you know. But at the end of the day, they see these things. It's kind of like, fuck, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you're a cop, you know, let's just say if you're a if you're let's just super random, but like if you're a zookeeper, right? And you fucking, your job is to manage the snakes, and like for some reason only the green snakes or whatever it is, it's like there's a specific kind of like snake or whatever it is, and it's kind of like shit. I got to be more careful with this one because they tend to be a little more violent. I'm not saying they're a specific race or gender or whatever it is. Let's just say there's a certain kind. It's kind of like, fuck. If next time you come across that kind of snake, are you gonna be like, oh shit, let me be a little more careful?
Right. But I think that example that you're giving is one of the core tenets in what is wrong with policing in this country.
Yeah. If police pulls over a black person, like, oh, automatically this person's gonna be more violent. It's wrong.
Right. Exactly.
It's horrible.
Exactly. And I think, and I'm also unfamiliar in,
and that's why I feel like these cops are so like, they're undertrained. Like, it's awful because we need the best of the best out there.
Right.
Even if we have less, they need to be the best.
Right. Exactly. But what I was saying was I'm unfamiliar in like the structure of police forces.
Definitely.
Like I don't know the workforce hierarchy of each police department, but I think I don't know if this is in place, but I think a lot of police forces could benefit greatly from a human resources department that kind of exists outside of that force and is maybe part of like a government agency or something like that, that is just there to make sure that their standard of instruction and teaching and like
up to par.
Yeah, and their observations on what is going on in the workforce is like morally correct.
Yeah.
Especially like you had
like, didn't Derek Chauvin, he like that wasn't his first offense. Like he got away with a lot of shit.
Wasn't his first offense. Yeah. But also here in the LAPD, like there's an instance this past Valentine's Day of police officers sending each other like one of those like Valentine's Day memes.
Oh yeah.
And
shit. What happened specifically? It was bad.
Yeah, it had a picture of George Floyd on it and was like, "You take my breath away." And like those like people in the LAPD are sending that to each other. And so do you think like that culture is like harboring or fostering an environment where like they care about BIPOC communities? No, like they're treating them literally as a joke. And like not even like treating them as people as a joke. They are treating like one of the worst things out of last year where like someone was literally like had their neck pressed on for 10 minutes and died over maybe counterfeit bills. Like they're treating that situation as a joke that happened from another police department. Like that is evidence in and of itself that a lot of the police forces in the country do not have the correct environment when dealing.
That's true.
When they're trying to protect and serve.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you on that.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we need better policing. You can make the argument that I personally would need to see more evidence to see if less policing would be ideal. That's why I haven't necessarily stood for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely can understand the argument of reallocation of funds, and pulling out. But I can also see an argument of keeping them there.
Yeah, I wish I had like looked up some stuff on
I was
like
thinking about researching
European countries or something like that, but I didn't know we'd be talking this much about policing forces.
Me neither.
But I'm here for it.
Yeah, I feel you. Let's get into that's one thing. We would definitely need some more data on that to work on. Let's get into. You brought it up a little bit. Let's get into gun restrictions.
Okay.
Sure. So what specifically, obviously we have these mass shootings, they're awful, and no one is a proponent of those. Why do you feel like there is understandably there's these traumatic and, awful and scarring events of people getting fucking blown, to smithereens and children, and these are awful. And I can understand why one would want gun restrictions, and we definitely need to have. there's an issue at hand,
Yeah.
of mass shootings.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are, absolutist in regards to, this is how we should go about it and this is how we should go about it. And like you said earlier, it's like if you look at it from a realistic and logical standpoint, what are some things that you are a proponent of that you think could work?
You said people are absolutist one way or the other, and fuck it, I am too. The Second Amendment is outdated. No one needs to own a gun. That's my opinion.
Really?
I don't think there's a good reason for anybody to own a gun and keep it with them at all times.
Aha, okay. Let's get into it. All right.
Shooting ranges obviously are different.
I go in your house.
That's just like sport.
I'm going in your house. I'm trying to raid your house. I'm trying to rape your sister.
Sure.
What do you do?
I mean, there's a lot of other things I can do.
Like what?
I see what you're saying. I mean, you could grab a knife.
3 people barge in your house, Liam.
No, but you right. But guns, at least automatic weapons.
Those are illegal.
Not in every state.
Automatic weapons are illegal in every state, correct? Like fully automatic?
I don't believe so.
I'm not too sure, but I have seen
I can
there are states where you can get
I'm-
automatic weapons
With permits, which also are very easy to get.
I need some more info. I don't know specifically how easy it is to get an automatic weapon.
Well, you can go to Vegas and go to a shooting range. Well, it's a shooting range, but shooting ranges have them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which again, I think shooting ranges are different.
Okay. So
But I think
you don't think anyone needs to own a gun?
I don't think anyone needs to own a gun. I need to formulate my opinion a little bit more about this.
Why?
But there's just so many things wrong with guns in this country, especially the fact that gun sales are profitized and that people are making money off of guns.
Everything's profitized.
Yeah, I know, but you have the NRA, which is behind all of that profitization, going to legislation in Congress and in the Senate, wherever, and continuing to push people in power to keep gun sales.
I don't
coming
know.
in.
I'm not educated on the financial aspect of obviously guns are profitable and everyone there's more guns than people in the US. But I'm not here to argue whether or not it's getting profitized. Obviously it is.
But I think that it is terrible that it is because
it's also terrible that Cheetos are profitized and making everybody fat though.
I mean, yeah, but you can't really compare someone eating bags of Cheetos for their whole life to like a mass shooting.
I mean, sure, but what I'm saying is in general, like if we're just talking about simply in terms of like profiting, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still like
my issue with it though is we have tragedies so often in this country, except for last year when there was a pandemic and everyone was inside. But we have so many instances of like churches and schools and just like concerts, people just like walking outside and they could get shot up at any moment. And that's like the country that we live in. And even though we have so many of these circumstances, we still have gun lobbyists in the places where legislation is happening in this country that don't care about any of these lives that were lost and just want to continue pumping in money to these lawmakers so that they can keep profitizing from these gun sales.
Well,
That's my big issue with
But what
it.
about lives that are saved from guns?
I mean,
You can make the argument that more lives are saved.
sure, you could make that argument, but also like I feel like that invalidates a lot of the mass shootings that happen in this country.
There's definitely an issue, and those need to be addressed.
Right. No,
What I'm saying,
I get what you're saying.
What
I
I'm
get what you're
saying is to blame the actual physical gun itself on this issue is obviously I understand, but if that were the case, why are these mass shootings happening now and not before? It was, in fact, back in the day, it was easier to get these guns. Like anyone could buy like an automatic weapon back in the day.
This might go down a different avenue of discussion, but I think a lot of why it's happening now is that people are frustrated with the system.
Or life. Like, sure.
Their life under the system. And like not to go back to like capitalism is the
Sure.
root of all evil, because like
Yeah.
it is, in my opinion it is. But I think a lot of the reason why a lot of these shootings are happening now is that just people are dissatisfied with their life now. And
It's just so. I feel like we're in the best time of life though. Like everything is so like we're the most comfortable. You know, we're like the quality of living is the best. Like you can we are in the best of times.
I mean,
in the history of the world ever.
That very much depends on who you are. And how much you benefit from the society you live in. Because there are
what circumstance would you say the past has been better though?
I mean, not a lot. I mean, I think the 70s were cool. I think everyone was just getting high and having sex all the time.
Yeah,
that seems
people were
pretty sick
dying
to
from
me.
AIDS left and right though.
Yeah, no, true.
Medication, information, the internet,
Right.
money.
No, you're right.
Health.
I think
knowledge.
I even though I might have come across as very pessimistic, I do genuinely think that like now we live in times that are seeing growth. And I think a lot of that has to do with the internet and globalization and kind of the world kind of coming together.
So okay.
So
get it.
so just to conclude on that conversation, I do agree. Like we are living in a better period of history. That being said, though, there's still a lot of things that need to be changed
100%.
before I call it like the best of times.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally. Why should a psychotic mass shooter who's most of the time they're fucked up on psychedelic drugs, like they have opioid addictions, like there's direct correlation to them having shitty lives, right? Why should that person dictate millions of other gun owners and how they should be treated?
What do you mean by
Like,
that?
for example, like one person goes and does a mass shooting. Awful, right? Everyone's like, why should me as a gun owner have to suffer for that? For example, 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people look like me. Why should I have to apologize for 9/11? I don't, right? It's kind of like they're not exactly the same thing, but it's like,
Yeah, I would be hesitant on calling them the same thing, but I see your point.
they're not. You know what I'm saying?
No. I get what you're saying. Is that like someone who causes a mass shooting shouldn't be representative of
The majority of what they
the
do.
majority.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, yeah, I mean,
That's my point. That's how gun owners
right.
feel.
No, and I agree with that. But I think at this point, it is just such a big issue and so many lives have been lost from it that we need to backtrack on it.
That, like how? Go.
I mean, federally banning all assault weapons, which I'm not sure if knocking over that but like I am not sure if that is
How do you do that
the
with less
case
policing?
or not. What do you mean? How do you do that? with
How
less
do you get
police?
rid of everyone's assault weapon with less police?
You just redistribute funds, man. You
Who's gonna come in and take my gun though?
I mean, that's what's the term? Ex post facto.
I don't know what that means.
It's passing a law, and then something you do in the past, which is now illegal now. They
Yeah.
can't come after you for that. So like
Okay, so then
that whole thing of
well,
like-
then if that's the case, then then there's no change.
no, not now, but in the long term there will be. 10, 20 years down
Okay,
the road.
but then a mass shooter, like let's just say, you federally ban all assault weapons. The future, let's just say you ban all the future.
Hopefully.
Sure. Okay. That still doesn't solve the mass shooting issue at all.
I say it certainly does.
How? Because there's more guns out there than people, bro.
Ex post facto means something done after the fact. It's retroactive.
Yeah.
So these people, look, man. If you're a psycho and want to shoot up a place, you're gonna find the gun.
Well, and also I think there's a lot Well, and I think this is an avenue that we are getting a little bit better at least. I've seen a lot of different stories of, like, dudes posting on, like, their Instagram, like, I'm gonna kill everyone.
Oh, dude,
and then,
for sure.
And then,
like, what's his name? The fucking kid in Florida.
Oh,
Cruz.
yeah.
Nicholas Cruz?
Yeah.
This dude was Nicholas Cruz is his name?
I don't think was it Nicholas Cruz? Was that Parkland?
Pull that up, Jamie.
Come on.
No, so point is, there's a kid, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he was like this super far right wing guy.
Right.
Bought his guns legally, right? And this dude was posting on his Instagram and shit, saying like, okay, cool.
Yeah,
posting on his Instagram like, like, here's my ARs. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna kill every single person that was like has been rude to me. He was reported to the feds. He was reported to the police department, right? And they were not allowed to go into his house and take his guns. That is a law. That's a common sense, right? That I feel like everyone should get back. You know what I'm saying? Like, get on.
That they couldn't go into his house, or that they should have been able to go into his house.
If you show like signs of, that's a direct threat, right? Like,
yeah.
And that
Bro, if someone
you
says,
shouldn't be owning guns. If
someone says to
like
anybody, "I'm gonna kill you," like if anyone said that to me, you're threatening me.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care.
What's crazy, and everyone's just kind of like look like the FBI and shit. They were like, they just look past it, you know?
Yeah.
Like if that's the case, yeah, you definitely need more regulation on stuff like that. You know, that's definitely true.
Yeah, and I think we are getting better at that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think maybe even like 5 years ago, it was like seen as like, they're just crazy. They're not gonna do it. And then they do it, and they're like, "Oh, what could we have done to stop this?" I think we're getting a lot better at that now, thankfully.
Okay,
so I think that's one.
To go back on what you're saying in regards to no one needs a gun. Do you still believe in that?
Yeah,
if you're live in a neighborhood, right, and you just like that's filled with robberies, right? Every 8 seconds, a house gets robbed in the U.S. I think that's what they said in the commercial.
That doesn't necessarily mean that you need a gun to kill the person, though.
But it's who says you have to kill him?
Yeah, you might not have to kill him, but like
if I show him I have a gun and I'm pointing my gun at him, you think he's just gonna walk over and keep stealing my shit?
Well, no, but like, what if they have a gun and they shoot?
Cool, and I have a fighting chance.
Right, but what I'm saying here...
Let me ask you something. I'm a fighter. I train.
Okay? Yeah, just beat him up.
Should I have the right to know how to do that? Should I have the right to know how to defend myself?
Yeah, you should.
And what if I choose to... If I'm a woman, let's just say, right? A gun is the ultimate equalizer. That's 100% true.
I mean...
There's only one way a woman could take down 3 dudes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Why should she not have the right to be able to do that? Is my point. She doesn't look. Ideally, she shouldn't have to have that gun, but that's not the reality of the situation. Like that's not the reality of the situation we have at hand. That's being naive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like people should have the right to know how to defend themselves in any way.
Yes, but the sole reason for firing a gun is to kill someone.
Sure.
Like that.
Sometimes that's needed.
That is the objective, point blank.
100%.
And sometimes
that is the ideal thing to do, though.
I don't think that on spot decision making should be that widely and easily accessible, though. I think at least, rather than getting rid of all guns completely, I think you can agree we need a change on gun protocol in this country. At least. But what we need more restrictions and regulations. It needs to be a lot harder to get a gun than it is now, because the reason behind buying a gun is potentially to kill someone. true, it could be to save yourself, but how are you saving yourself? You're killing another person. And I don't think that on the spot decision making and that kind of power should be that easily accessible. Not everybody should have the power to kill someone.
But the reason the argument against that is they should, because in some cases it's needed.
My argument against that?
No. I'm saying, look, a woman or any kinds of, let's just say you're getting attacked of some sort, like you're getting, your house is getting broken into, you know what I'm saying? Like, I understand what you're saying of like, I'm just going to disagree with you. I feel like in that scenario, you should have the right to have that spot on decision making.
Yeah. And I don't.
Well, like, I just don't understand, like, but why not though? Like, someone breaks into your house, like, and you don't have a choice, and like, what you're saying is you shouldn't have the choice to defend yourself in that scenario.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the choice to defend yourself.
Well, that's what it is. That on the spot decision making is you defending yourself.
Right, but I don't think,
and your family.
I don't think robbery is a justifiable reason to kill anyone. You could flash the gun and be like, get the fuck away from me.
I mean, of course, killing someone, it's like, but once again, going back on what Kevin says, you're not necessarily killing the person.
Right, you're not
Showing
necessarily,
them that I could.
You're not necessarily killing someone, but not everybody is necessarily like you. Like, there's a lot of people that will just quickly fire the trigger.
For sure. And I
think that a lot of that is the reason why we need more legislation and restriction.
Well, for example, in California, like, did you know, like, if someone breaks into my house, like, and I kill him, like, I'm at fault. Like,
I think you should be.
Yeah. So, like, for example, like, well, it depends on what they're doing, right? But in general, like, a lot of states are like that, you know?
Yeah. I think that's valid. Honestly, I do. Because I don't think that level of theft to killing another person is
Sure.
balanced.
That's understandable.
That's just what I think.
That's for sure understandable. Yeah. But if someone's attacking you?
Still, even then.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think it's justifiable to kill someone. Unless they're about to kill you. But if they're attacking you.
Same. Like, how do you tell the difference? Like,
and that's fair.
My point exactly.
That's fair and that's valid. I'm just,
someone attacks you, like, how do you know they're not going to kill you?
Right, and that's fair. I just don't think that we as a collective should be so quick on killing someone.
For sure, genuine, like, if you know how to operate your gun genuinely, like, if you really know how to go about, like, if someone is, for example, like, if someone's breaking into my house, right? Mm-hmm. The last thing you want to do is go in and be a fucking army, like, soldier and go in and clear your house and shoot whoever's, like, John Wick's type shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
get
it's
the
not
fuck
get
off
the
my
fuck
property.
off my property. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The first thing here's what I was taught. Right? It was like, all right, someone's breaking into your house. Cool. You grab your gun. Cool. Sounds good. You go into the corner. You hide in the corner. You get the police on the phone. Get some kind of film. Right? And you let them rob your house, essentially. Right? And you let them know, like, if someone, but the second someone barges through that door that you're in and they're coming at you, you shoot. Because you don't know what they're going to do at that point. Right?
I mean, I disagree, though. Like, going back to
if someone is coming at you, Liam, like, and you've done everything, you're like, all right, like, this person robbed my house. Cool. Sounds good. Now, so, like, if you're an elderly woman, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're saying just let the person come and attack you. Like,
I mean, like, it's
worst
tough,
worst case scenario.
See, my issue with that is that is a lot of what is taught in, going back to our earlier conversation about policing, is like, if someone is running up on you, you have every right to shoot them. And I just kind of disagree with that sentiment.
In regards to policing, yeah, because you're held to a higher standard.
Right.
That's different.
Right, it's different.
Talk about the average person.
It's different, though. But I'm still hesitant to agree on the average person in that. I see what you're saying, definitely, about, like, we should have an avenue to protect ourselves for sure. If someone is charging after you, I get that.
You're just saying that
I'm
doesn't
just-
necessarily mean it. That doesn't necessarily mean it should be a gun.
It should be a gun. Yes.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that that is your best option in a lot of scenarios.
Right. And
do you
that makes
understand
sense. No, yeah, totally. That makes
So
sense.
that exactly. So, but you're still saying what you're saying. I shouldn't have that right then. Even if it's the best scenario for my life in a ton of ways.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying. And again, I think the larger issue of gun violence in this country does kind of outweigh that. I think there should be a little bit more done in regards to guns.
Like, give me more examples.
I mean, I think it should be harder to get a gun in the first place. I think there should be a lot more tests that you need to go through. I know certain states have passed like psychological backgrounds to make sure that you are like fine mentally in order to obtain a gun of any kind. But that's not the same for every state.
Yeah.
Some states are it's easier to get a gun than getting a driver's license, which I think is ridiculous. I think it's completely ridiculous. That and a lot of loopholes that people can go through. Like even if you are there are certain states where like even if you cannot obtain a firearm, you could still get one. There's a lot of loopholes you can do to get one. There's a lot of like back alley gun stores that you could just hop into and be like, "Hey, I'm looking for a gun."
But that's illegal.
It's illegal. It still happens.
Sure, but that's not. That doesn't necessarily. Like,
But a lot of that
we're
has
not talking about black market guns.
no, but a lot of that has to do with distribution and production of guns.
Sure.
Which I think needs to be halted in a certain case too.
What do you think on that?
I'd be here for like 15, 20 minutes to explain it. But I mean,
We'll go. What the fuck? We got time.
I'm in the same camp where the way I kind of believe it is, who is someone else to tell me how I can defend myself. But I understand, like, you know, killing someone is wrong, but it's too situational.
Yeah,
It's too situational. That's a very good way.
That's a good way to put it.
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
Circumstantial is the
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very circumstantial. Any case you look at with a gun involved,
If
period.
someone else
Sure.
had a gun, 3 people each had one gun coming into my house, there's nothing I can do. Yeah, I know how to fight, or feel like I can go fist up with them. I'm gonna get shot.
Yeah,
I would feel safer having a gun.
right. And I think
But I wouldn't shoot
And so would you.
I wouldn't
No,
shoot someone who was
yeah.
armed, though.
But I think
Sure.
I think because a lot of things involving guns are way too circumstantial, we need to put a back pedal on it because there's been so many problems with gun violence in this country. Because like we said, any case with a gun is very circumstantial. Because of that, we need to just we need to repeal a lot of the guns and save more lives than just hypothetically banking on like these certain conditional circumstances. that we
So
can
let's
system.
talk about.
In terms of the black market guns, that's not gonna stop bad people from still getting them.
That's what I'm saying. So like in regards to like these people dying from guns, right? Most of it is happening from intentional use of like killing someone that I want to kill, gang violence,
Right.
all that stuff, robbery, all that stuff, right? It's intentional, right? And that's where the assault rifle thing is funny because most of these mass shootings, yes, right? But most of the gun violence happening in the country is not being done by assault rifles.
It's gang violence.
It's gang violence by handguns off the black market.
I mean,
It's what is it?
I don't
It's a very, very, very small percentage of this gun violence being done by suicides.
I don't know if I'm
suicides,
inclined to
accidental
agree.
discharges, right? We could look it up statistically.
Yeah, we can look it up.
Statistically, it is a
Okay,
fact
okay.
that assault rifles are not doing the violence that we think.
Okay, but here's the thing with that.
They just look scary. That's why people are scared of them.
No, but here's the thing with that.
And they do a lot of damage.
They do a lot of
They
damage.
do a lot of damage.
And there's no reason why anyone should hold the weapon that constantly is shooting. That's
where as a
big reason why it's not that it's necessarily that mass shootings are the most grandiose like killings like it's the highest number of killings in the country, but it could be the most preventable. And that is the issue at hand, is that we can prevent this. So why don't we?
So, so you're saying the prevention of it is getting rid of all of them.
Maybe.
How do you prevent that?
Maybe.
Realistically, how is it preventable at this point?
I think that
Because it's not preventable.
what isn't?
I feel like at this point, right? Like the only preventable way of like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be a pessimist either,
No, yeah.
but it's kind of like if some psychopath's gonna get a hold of an assault rifle, like they will, whether it's off the black market or not.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, it's not obviously nothing is ever going to be 100% foolproof, preventable at all.
But also, what do you say to the law-abiding, responsible gun owners, right, that have assault rifles that are just totally fine and just that's their weapon of choice just in case?
I don't give a shit. No one should own an assault rifle. Like, period. Like
But who are you to tell them what to have and what not to have?
I mean,
You are in no position to say that though.
no, you're right. I'm not. But
That's just what you believe.
going back to socialism, my friend, if that is what the masses feel is going to protect them and keep them safe, that should be valued.
But when you get into masses, you get into percentages. Say, for example, the 49% or the 51% ruling over the 49%.
Well,
It's
and
the masses, but it's
right.
one group ruling over the other.
Right. No, you're right. And I think a lot of that has a lot to do with how fucked we are politically in this country. The fact that we are so divided into a two-party system. I think we need to have like a 10, 20-party system. Like, no, easily. A two-party system is so flawed because it divides you and you're in either this camp or this camp. And I voted for Joe Biden when like, I don't fuck with Joe Biden at all. Like, I don't fuck with either of them.
You're a Bernie guy, right?
Yeah, I'm a Bernie bro.
You're a Bernie guy.
Yeah. But like, you know, I have to vote for Joe Biden. That's the system that we live in. But you could have a political spectrum like even bigger than that, where we have like 5 different parties. We could have the Democratic Party, Liberal Party, Labor Party, Conservative Party, Green Party. Like, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we do.
No, we don't.
But those parties are available though, right?
No, we don't.
We do or we don't.
We like you could say that, but again, going back to like super PACs and a lot of these corporations that push, they keep the parties afloat.
I'm not educated on that, but I know they're bullshit. Like the super PACs and stuff and the power that they have. Like how do you stop those guys?
Trust busting, just going from the ground up. And I mean, like, people might disagree with me for saying this, but like, take a lot of their money and just rip it out from under them, redistribute it.
Is that how you feel about so I'm going forward, I'm assuming you are a proponent of the wealth tax then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What and we've talked about this, you know, I think was it me and you were talking about billionaires and how like how much money $1 billion
I'm sure
is.
we've talked about it at work sometime.
And how much fucking money $1 billion is. It's
Yeah,
a lot of money.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I think now the
It's just
the
I
top
guess
point, the top, I like this is always the like the go-to statistic or whatever. But I think now, and it's an important statistic to talk about. But the 0.1% of people in this country, not even the 1%, the 0.1%, own more wealth in this country than over 50% of the bottom half, and that's just crazy to me. Like, that is an example of a flawed system.
I'm not sure if the statistic is 100% accurate, but I heard that if you took
fact check.
Yeah, we need Jane, pull that up. if you took that one, like, even if you took the 1%, if you took all their money and redistributed it, it like doesn't even make a dent in the issues we have at hand financially.
I think it will. If Bro, no one needs to have $30 billion to live comfortably.
That is definitely true.
No one
That
does.
is no one.
And you could be like, oh, they worked for that money. They earned that money. No, they didn't. They benefited from other people working for them to get that money. It's not from them.
Comes up says most of those who are poor will end up poor again. Those who used to be rich will eventually gain back the wealth they had. After redistribution, previously poor people will commit money mistakes and eventually just end up poor again because they wouldn't know how to manage the money that they were given. You could make the argument. Some people would make the argument that people are poor because of their own choices, not because of the systems that bind us.
Which
you can argue against.
heavily
because of the
disagree
education
with.
and what they're taught.
Which I heavily disagree with.
Because that education,
Bro,
For financial education, I mean, you talk about this before, it can play a role sometimes, but it's not the end all be all.
But what about that statistic? I'm just interested in the specific example of like the 0.1% versus the.
This is our first
50%.
podcast we've had like fact checking with Jamie. I love it.
Hey, word! I'm here for it.
Have you fact checked me before on a podcast?
We never had. I don't think we've had one that does require fact checking, like something as deep as this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to come on here.
I know all the facts, so it's kind of like damn.
I can go right now.
God damn it. Liam's too smart for me. I'm just kidding. No, look, if there's one thing that I'm like, look, me and you have talked about this and where I stand politically, and it's like how I'm in the middle. There's some things that I'm so like, I'm very liberal on, some things I'm conservative on, right?
Right.
No one fucking needs that much money. Like, no one does, right?
one does.
However, like, there's just this little part of me that says, like, fuck, if they do it fairly and legally.
But
But Liam. It's like,
okay. Yeah, hear me out.
I do it fairly and legally.
I'll hear you out.
All right. I do it fairly and legally, right? Like, fairly and legally in terms of, like, in the system we're in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
And it's kind of like, and I think I know what you're going to say. But in general,
you know
right?
what I'm going to say.
In general, right? Like, fuck, like, if I did it legally, like, why should I, like I earned that money. And yes, I did it through the, I guess you could say, exploitation of, like, the people at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, they did choose to work for me. This is my offer. Work for me or not. I didn't force you to work for me. I'm Jeff Bezos, right? Oh, I have a job and I want drivers and I'm paying you $15 an hour. Apply if you want.
Right.
You could make the argument that sometimes there are companies that say, work for me. Either you can work for me or you can die poor. Like, I'm the only option. Sometimes.
Which is the case for a lot of Amazon workers, going back to Bezos.
Yeah.
But going back to that, I would say that, and again, it kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier, but choice in a capitalist system is kind of a myth. Like, no matter what choice or what
I've
company
been hearing about this.
or what company you go to or what employer you decide to work for, no matter where you go, you were always going to be exploited. Always. So you could say, like, yeah, this person voluntarily chose to work for me, but, like, what if they didn't? They will voluntarily choose to go work for someone else and get them richer. Like, there's no choice. You're always just going to be exploited.
So what do you have to say against the people that, like, so you're saying that people who have the choice to not do that, right, are the ones that are privileged?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But then how about people that are, like, homeless and go through shitty experiences and still end up making it? Like, who are not privileged? What about the people who are not privileged and still make it?
I mean, shit, yeah. They probably worked their ass off for their whole life. And they probably not only worked a 9 to 5, but also a 5 to 9. Working as hard as they can, just to make ends meet and be able to live.
Then eventually make it.
Right. Well, I mean, even then, like, how much do you really make it in the system? There's always going to be people on top of you. But, like, sure, we can say that they're able to live comfortably. But you have to, the fact that you have to grind that much and devote yourself to another person, or not even another person, but a company that doesn't, it itself is not even a person. The fact that you have to devote so much time, effort, and energy into that is fucked.
Not everybody feels that way. Like, a lot of people do have pride in the work that they put in and the jobs that they do.
No, yeah, and
I
that
understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying there are also people who,
right, and there's people that love what they do, certainly, but that's not the case for most people.
No, of course.
Yeah.
So there's this concept Bernie says all the time, right? It's like no one should be working 80 hours a week and not be able to live like somewhat comfortably.
Right.
Right? And it's kind of like how do you feel about that? Like if I work 40 hours at a minimum wage job, right? Should I be able to live comfortably in the US?
A living wage. Yeah.
Was minimum wage meant to be a living wage, or was it meant to be something for younger people or high schoolers to use as a stepping stone?
And here's my thoughts on the minimum wage. I think the minimum wage was designed to be enough money for people to eat, but not enough money so that people are dependent on their job, so that they continue working for whatever company they're working for in order just to be able to barely live. And that in
So
and of
you're
itself
saying-
is exploitation.
So you're saying it should be designed to live, not to survive.
Yeah.
Got it.
Everybody deserves to live, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Even people who don't work, I would argue, deserve to live. And we all deserve to live. And I think a lot of that, and like, again, people disagree with me because like it's just different beliefs on what people have on other people. But my general thoughts is that we all are a little bit more equitable than we think. We all deserve to live no matter our conditions. And it's kind of the government's responsibility to ensure that and make society a little bit more of an equitable place.
Okay. Socialism. Why? Sometimes I feel like socialism, like. So, do you believe in a free market?
I don't think there's such thing as a free market.
What do you mean?
I like, you could claim that like, yeah, this is like, we have a free market where people are free to go wherever they want, to buy whatever they want, and that the invisible hand is guiding the market. But it's not that simple. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And like, going back also, a lot of these companies that like, say like oil rigging companies, like they continuously profit from putting their extremely visible hand in the pockets of politicians to keep their profitization afloat. They are guiding the way that the market exists, and they are guiding a lot of the laws and regulations on what they can and can't do to their employees. It's not a free market. It's a market that is heavily designed to make people at the top even richer than they need to be.
But in general, should everyone have the option of like providing a skill or service or product and have a shot at trying to become one of
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in regards,
Socialism doesn't say that you shouldn't. I mean, there's this big
a lot
thing.
of people have that notion though. Like,
There's a big thing that like, oh, under communism we're all gonna like wear the same gray shirts
'Cause there's
and
these-
go
'cause
to the go to these same mining factories and then go to our homes that all look identical.
well, like for example, like in regards to what are the countries that people refer to? Norway, Switzerland, Scandinavia.
Yeah.
These countries that like are
Sweden.
considered socialist, right? They're not. They're not completely socialist.
They're democratic socialists.
Yeah, they're some. One could argue they call it like, what is it, like cuddly capitalism. They're just very, very generous capitalist societies. Right? Sometimes I feel like the word socialism, like a lot of socialists, like just that word scares people off. And like you said earlier in the podcast, it does, right? Like, do you feel like people could just brand it differently and just like call it more generous capitalism? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean,
socialism is just a scary word to people.
dude. If that's what gets people on board, and it's like, hey, man, you know, I'm down for some of this. Let's divide up the money a little bit more and make society a little bit more fair and livable for everyone. I'm down with that. Call it whatever the fuck you want. But at the end of the day, like,
I'm like, bad branding on your guys' part, man.
but I don't think it's bad branding. Like, think of the term socialism.
I think it's bad branding.
It's an ism. It's a thought, a belief about social, the society,
Yeah, but
the people involved.
The historic
Connotation.
It's the history of it that throws people off.
Because it's what we're taught.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's kind of like,
Exactly.
if you are a socialist, you should just understand that and just be like, all right, like, let's call it something else.
Or you can talk to people
Yeah.
and learn a little bit more about it.
Mm-hmm. And you told me earlier, historically, in some cases, it's worked. So, like, can you give me some examples?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't know specific examples of where it's worked other than like those Northern European countries.
They have just socialist programs. They're capitalized.
Yeah, but you like that's not the same as the capitalism we have here.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Like they are. I know there's some communities in those countries that like are build homes, like big communal homes of like it's like one house with like 10 different families in it that like gets money from the government, just that house, and they all live together and they live comfortably. And like, who's to say that we shouldn't do that here in this country? Like, we won't though, because we don't care about the homeless population because we don't consider them as people. But stuff like that is like not reflective of the society that we live in. And I would say that they're definitely more socialist leaning for sure. I also think it's a mistake in our American mythos to say that like people in the Soviet Union were suffering the entire time that it was the Soviet Union. I think a lot of that has to do with what we were taught in school, that like we were containing the evil of socialism from spreading across the world because those people were miserable, and we went on the fucking moon, baby. Like I think that's part of the myth that we've constructed about that time, especially like.
But there was a lot of suffering that went down in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, there's a lot of suffering that happened.
And shit.
There's a lot of suffering that happened in the United States at the same time. The civil rights movement. No place is perfect. Every nation has its fair share of problems.
For sure. Yeah,
But-
America's fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, we've always been fucked.
Yeah.
But to boil that whole history of that country down to like everyone was just suffering the whole time, I think that's just part of the idea that we've created from that time.
Possibly. I'm not too.
And also because our older generation that is living now lived through that time where they were taught in schools that they
is
were
happening.
the evil of the world and they could kill us at any point.
Yeah.
So a lot of that has spillage in over today.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a good point too, is the history of the older generation still being around and how that ties into like military power and you know, like the arms race and stuff like that can also play a factor. Like the what was it, the 13-day like confrontation and
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like,
Yeah.
that definitely played a role in it too.
Yeah, and like
Russia's gonna blow us up.
right, and my dad, who is, God, if he's watching this part, I'm coming up with his age. He is 72.
Your dad's old.
My dad
I
is
remember
old.
you were telling. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He's one of my heroes.
What's his name?
Tom.
Tom. You're the man.
But anyway, he lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. I believe he was in high school.
Wow.
Or something like that during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he's told me like repeatedly, like, I thought I was genuinely going to die for those days.
Wow.
And so like clearly that shit has an effect on you, especially at such a young age developmentally, where you are so easily influenced by the culture and environment of what you are taught and what you're learning about the world.
Yeah.
Not saying that my dad thinks all Russians are evil.
No, totally.
or
No, I see
whatever.
what you're saying.
But you know, there certainly are people that are and still believe that to this day. And that's why communism, socialism is such an evil word in this country. It also is an evil word in this country because, again, it takes money and profit out of the hands of people who are profitizing off of the exploitation of labor of other people and puts them in the hands of those people. People in power don't like socialism or communism because it fucks them over. And so they just brand it as evil. They're like, no, we should not be doing this. Don't do
Stop
this.
it.
Stop. Don't talk about it.
Nope. Don't say the fucking word.
Exactly. Yeah.
I gotta pee.
Yeah, how are we on time? Okay.
We're already at an hour and a half. Jesus.
Damn.
I was trying to keep him at an hour.
We could get it wrapped up.
No, we're good. Wrap it up, Dave. You're wrong.
Hey.
He's wrong.
I think a lot of that
Don't
has to do
listen to him.
with
Bullshit.
military power.
Nope.
And just like military forces imposing capitalism on other countries.
What happened? What were we talking about?
Oh, you were saying how capitalism is ingrained into, like, because I said, like, isn't it good that or doesn't it speak to how good capitalism can be or beneficial that a lot of countries are capitalist? But you were saying that it's just so ingrained in our society that, like, we can't really do anything about it. Because, like, you made a joke about drinking Mountain Dew and taking part in capitalism.
Hey, go capitalism, baby. Mountain Dew Code Red.
Yeah, people say, what was the point? Oh, well, if you hate capitalism so much, then why do you take part in it? Well, we live in it. That's all we know.
Yeah, it's like
I see.
It's like there's nothing we can do. Like, you know.
Well, could you make the argument that it's made our lives better?
That's what I was saying.
Right.
It's beneficial. Is it necessarily good?
Yeah, and I would say that for most of the population it is certainly not beneficial. And that is what socialism addresses. That is that society should be a little bit more equitable and fair for everyone. Whereas capitalism is specifically designed to not be fair. It is specifically designed to keep people at the top making more money off of people below them who make less, people below them who make less, people below them who make less.
What would you say to someone that, you know, the beauty of living in a capitalist society, you can still have, if you want to run a company and run it like a socialist, you can.
Whereas under socialism, you might not.
Yeah, exactly.
Run capitalist.
Yeah.
I don't see the point. So like
For example, there's a yogurt company that it's essentially like the employees run it. Like there's still people who at the top, you know what I'm saying? But like everyone gets paid like the same and stuff like that. Like everyone, not exactly the same, but like it's very evenly distributed, right?
Right.
What's a fucking company? God damn it. I don't know. But there's company. You have the luxury
Sure.
of running
Yeah,
a company
yeah, I
like that,
get what you're saying.
which is cool.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I'm
Whereas in
totally on
socialism,
board with that.
you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, you certainly can. You certainly can. Make the pay gap a little less widened. Pay people at the bottom a little bit more.
Chobani.
Chobani?
Is giving employees shares in the company.
Hey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on Reddit, so I don't know.
Well, a lot of companies give their employees shares.
I'm gonna get some Chobani after
No,
this.
Chobani's very like their employees it's actually a Middle Eastern guy. I think he's Pakistani dude. If I'm not tripping.
Word up.
Yeah.
He's not a white guy.
No, he's not. Let's get into race a little bit. Do you feel like
Okay.
it's like in regards to like white? Me and you have talked about this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Do you feel like white people are kind of shitted on a little too much in today's society? You're white.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if
Are you do you have white guilt?
do I have white guilt? I mean, I wouldn't classify it as white guilt. It's more of just like an acknowledgement that the benefits and my position in society today has been built on a history of oppression of other races, of other people. Like I am able to live comfortably in American society today because of that history. So I wouldn't say it's white guilt.
But it's not. That doesn't. That you're saying only because of the color of your skin. Because there's other people that live comfortably that like you that aren't white, right? Like for example, like so.
But everyone's lived experiences are completely different.
Sure.
And like I can't say I have been pulled over by the police and I was afraid that I was going to get shot compared to, I don't know, a like a black guy who makes millions of dollars. Like, I'm sure, like, if he were to get pulled over, no matter his situation, he might have that fear, a lot more fear than I would. So I do. I think a lot of it has to do with race, and I think a lot of it has to do with the history of race in this country, for sure.
No, I would definitely say, like, that's, I'm not trying to speak for, like, African Americans or black people. That's definitely true. Like, if that's how they feel, and that's definitely is justifiable, But I just feel like a lot of people, like, I've heard this, and it's kind of like, oh, like, I'm a straight white dude, and it's kind of like if I have a say in anything, like, I'm just gonna get kind of thrown into this bubble of like, all right, well, bro, you shouldn't have a say. Like, you're white, dude. Like, chill out. And I feel like that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. And I
think everyone should have a say, no matter what their demographic or skin color is.
I get that.
Like a lot, like I feel like nowadays it's kind of like, oh, you're white, step aside, bro. And it's like in some cases that should be happening, but I feel like it's happening a lot in a lot of areas.
I think it would be better and more beneficial if it was less of a you're white, step aside, whereas like I'm white, I should let other people talk.
For sure, 100%.
And I think, I mean, obviously, like, you can't dictate the actions or thoughts of other people.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of what's happened this past year, and a lot of activist movements definitely have like informed me a lot about my position in society, to the point where like, yeah, maybe I should shut up because I already am privileged enough by the society I exist in, to where other people should have more say in things than me, and that's on a very micro scale. I feel like going toward a more progressive route to society, and I'm not saying like I'm the white messiah because I'm letting black people talk. like that's not what I'm getting at. But it's like if a lot more white people adopted this belief of just like shutting the fuck up because you already have enough say in what goes on in society as it is, then we would become, going back to what I was saying about socialism, a little bit more of an equitable place for everyone.
No, I understand it. I don't know. Like, it's just it's a concept to me that's like super new. That it's kind of like I never felt like white people were a hindrance to my progress at all, and that's me understanding that, like, all right, dude, like, don't be selfish. It's not just you, like, there's other people that have gone on, and like I feel like the very fact that I went through my life the way I did, it's kind of like, oh, well, white people, I don't see white people as a hindrance at all, whereas a lot of people do, and it's kind of like, oh, so I have to kind of like change the way I'm going about things and thinking about things. You know what I'm saying?
I think,
and I'm a minority.
I'm right. And I'm not telling you or other white people how to think or anything. But I think it would be beneficial to leave yourself as an individual out of it and just recognize that, like, the white collective voice is so oppressive in everything we do in this country that, like, you could do your part in just taking a step back. And, like, don't take it as a personal attack, like they don't want me to talk because I'm white. It's like, no, that's not it. It's just they want to have BIPOC and minority communities want a more elevated platform. To be able to speak on with, and like that can only be done fairly if it's approached fairly on every side. So I have disassociated myself as an individual in a lot of conversations by just acknowledging the wider social atmosphere and recognizing that my place in society comes from the oppression of other people. And like that's what it is, So just I think acknowledging that and kind of like working to better your communities from that, I think is a great thing.
What areas in the U.S. today do you feel like need more socialization? Obviously, there's the big ones like healthcare, education, free healthcare, free education.
Socialization in terms of like redistributing money or
Yeah.
being more fair to other races.
Redistributing money.
Because I think they go hand in hand. Because
Sure.
I think also that's another side of capitalism that like historically has disproportionately affected communities of color because individuals were taken from Africa to come here to literally be exploited for their labor. So it has disproportionately affected them. But anyway, a lot of that goes hand in hand, I would say. But I'd say, like, to give a broad answer, every avenue of American life. But yeah, education very much can benefit from socializations. Teachers should be making a lot more money than they do. Healthcare definitely. Policing in the reverse, that money needs to be kind of taken away and redistributed. Same thing with politics. I think money needs to be redistributed in the political sphere as well. And like, I don't know, even down to like the parks and like natural services. Like I love the parks. Give them more money. You know?
Where does this money come from?
Taxes.
On.
Taxes on everyday people. Me and you.
So like
But-
our taxes would be raised.
Not our taxes. Our taxes would be going to a pool to benefit society. But what needs to happen is there needs to be bigger tax brackets for the more wealthier people and less ways that they can get out of paying those taxes.
Yeah, it's obviously bullshit. Like people moving their money through like Swiss banks and stuff like that
Yeah.
are just like not paying any taxes. But once again, I want to look up the stat of like taxing these people doesn't necessarily solve that many issues.
I don't think we can easily answer that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is so unclear how much people at the top are paying in taxes. Like you have that.
Apparently there's a lot more money up there than we think. Like that's
Oh,
what
it's
people
yeah,
ask.
so much.
Yeah. You think there's a trillion? I want to know if there's a trillionaire out there.
Probably.
That's wild.
But I mean, take a look at the Trump thing. It was like late last year where like I think it was like a New York Times article that was like, oh, Trump only paid $700
Oh yeah.
in taxes that past year.
Well, wasn't it in 2019 Amazon paid like none
None.
in taxes?
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
$1 trillion company.
And then like Trump or Amazon could just come out and be like, that's not true. I did my taxes and I know that I paid millions of dollars in taxes
They're trillionaires.
Got it.
that we know of.
That we know of.
That we know of.
That we know of. Like, yeah.
But like what I was saying,
But didn't they say Jeff Bezos is on his way to being one? If you give him another like,
But it has to be Elon because Elon has to.
if you give Elon or Jeff Bezos like a few more years and they keep doing what they're doing, like they said they could possibly be trillionaires,
I could see that.
right?
But like these guys could just say like,
Just
I paid this much in taxes, believe me, and people.
So
will.
how do you feel about guys?
So
like,
unclear.
So how do you guys feel about guys like Elon who like treat their employees well and pay them good salaries?
I
and-
would not say Elon Musk treats
No?
his employees
I don't know.
well. I would not. There's people manufacturing stuff for him, and like they're manufacturing parts. Like there's
Like I've heard about Amazon workers, I'm like, man, this shit sucks. But I've never heard people working at Tesla or SpaceX that are kind of like, this shit sucks.
well, you don't hear about that because you hear that from American workers who are working in an office space that are like, yeah, I have it pretty easy. Like I live in LA, I make a good amount of money. That's fine. But I think the more concerning part should be workers around the world that like are technically still working for Tesla, just like maybe working for a distributing company that like pays or that gives Tesla services and then Tesla pays them. Like there's a lot of factors that go into production for a lot of these things that aren't recognized, but people are still being exploited. Like, under capitalism, there is no way that people are going to profitize if they don't exploit other people. And I think that's the root evil of it.
Got it. Well, that's it, folks. We'll call it there. Thank you, Liam. We could go all night about this.
Yeah, we could.
But I really appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
And I respect your views, and I know, vice versa, and we
Yeah,
have our
I
own
respect
things.
your views, dude.
And I feel like more people from both sides of the spectrum need to have conversations like this, have both voices heard, because at the end of the day, people just fucking bicker. People just want to fight and have these 15-second sound bites and these Twitter beefs, like we said. You know what I'm saying? Like, people just like choosing to not letting their egos get involved and sit there and like, oh, you're on that side? Cool. Say what you want to say, but I'm not going to listen to you because you're fucking wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's one of the main reasons I started the podcast as well, is that like this, me and you don't necessarily agree on a lot of things, but we're still fucking boys. We're friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, we choose that over what our beliefs are and stuff like that, and we come to common ground,
Right.
Dropping the shade of like, this is who I am, and being like, fully like formed into the beliefs that I am.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, what you believe in informs who you are as a person, and if you can't respect another person for that, that's just a shitty way to live, in my opinion.
Definitely, for real. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, and like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.